Hi, my name is Daniela Reyes and I am Hispanic. I guess the common stereotypes you would see for Hispanics is typically someone who only drinks tequila, they're always like in a poncho, the mustache, their English is probably not good, or they have like 500 relatives, or even just like that they're always the cook or like the janitor or housekeeper in the movie or the show or whatever, and they only eat like tacos and stuff. So I feel like those are very common stereotypes for Mexicans. So I feel like in movies, you definitely do see a lot of the Hispanic character, like the Mexican character, from like when we're little to like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Like I remember Esteban, he was like the bellhop, and he had like the longest name of life, and that was just something that's super common. Like I definitely confusion that people have because in Mexico people actually use their first, middle, last, and then like their mother's maiden name sometimes. Like it's just something that they do for legal paperwork and stuff, or even just like in movies like Bring It On or something, like the Hispanic girl, she was like extremely sassy, and like they had her like throwing in Spanish into her sentences like out of nowhere, like super Spanglish, and like you don't think anything of it, but it was just kind of like, that's not, I don't speak Spanglish all the time, so it was kind of silly. Or even just like, I don't know, like Maid from Manhattan or whatever, she's the housekeeper in the hotel and she meets the man, and so like that's another depiction where like the Hispanic is always like the housekeeper working like the lower class job, really common ones that we would never think twice of because those are all movies or shows that I've enjoyed, but it's definitely like the wrong depiction of the Hispanic. This law, to begin with, was passed, and it gave officers the permission to ask for proof of citizenship or paperwork when they pulled someone over, simply because of their appearance. So if they appeared to look like they were not U.S. citizens, they had the right to ask this person to prove, that they were, or like ask for a passport or something like that. And a lot of the people that do work in my hometown are on visas, or they do have their passports, but they live in Mexico and they come to the U.S. to work. So it kind of is, it's just, I thought it was kind of very racist just because they're literally only pulling someone over and asking them if they have their paperwork because of their skin tone. So for example, my father, I don't look very Hispanic, but my father's a little darker than I am. And there were many times when he would get pulled over for, I don't know, a broken taillight or something. And then the officer would ask him like if he was a U.S. citizen. And my dad he has been a U.S. citizen for years now. And so it's kind of just, it's almost offensive when this was passed just because it was only based off of his skin color, which is very dumb. But like they revised the bill and they basically amended it so that now the officer has the discretion. So like the officer can choose whether or not they want to ask someone for their citizenship, which I think is a lot better just because it was a very silly law in my opinion, just because everyone in my hometown is Hispanic. So it was kind of like you put a Hispanic officer in front of another Hispanic and this person has to ask him like, well, do you have your paperwork or are you a U.S. citizen? When it's like, it's just it was very unnecessary. And so I'm very glad that they revised that bill, but it was definitely, it kind of took everyone aback, especially in my community. So I've never been personally affected by any stereotypes or anything because I grew up in a hometown where everybody around me was Hispanic. I guess I have family members that have. I guess coming to school here, it was a little different, but even then, nothing's ever really like held me back or anything. I definitely remember kind of thinking it was weird when I came to school here and people were like, you kind of have an accent, and I was like, wait, what do you mean? But it was just because they meant, my English is a little different because I hear Spanish so often. And I guess, with family members, I have the same thing. Like, I have aunts who own like a business or something, and it's a housekeeping business, but she's never been a housekeeper, and so she gets asked all the time if she's the housekeeper or something, and it's just a presumption that people make because that's just the way that Hispanics are depicted typically, is the housekeeper or like the nanny or the janitor or something. So I guess in a way you could say that would hold her back, but it's just kind of an assumption that people tend to make. growing up in my hometown, I never thought of these people as overcoming a stereotype per se, because all of my doctors, like my dentist, everybody that I've ever thought of, lawyers and stuff, they're all Hispanic. So I never saw it as anything like a huge accomplishment or anything. Like, obviously it was great that they were doing that, but it was just very normal to me. But now living outside of that community, I do see that it isn't very common. Like, I don't think I've had a Hispanic doctor up here in Flagstaff. So, I mean, I could see how now it would be seen as something like a huge accomplishment or something. I am going to school, which, you know, is typically like not what the stereotype says. Or I also like work, and I don't work as a janitor or housekeeper or cook or anything. So I guess that would be also like another example of me overcoming or going past a stereotype.